Hi, I'm Stephen Tryon. I'm the founder of AccountabilityCitizenshipVideo2, and I'm back again for the second video in the series that I started this week to examine HR1, the fiscal year 2026 budget bill that the Congress passed and the president signed into law last week. I'm a little concerned that the speed with which the bill was passed didn't allow for an appropriate amount of examination of what is actually in the bill. And there's a lot of conflicting information, of conflicting perspectives on what the bill is going to do and on whether it's going to help America or hurt America. And that's really the reason why I wanted to go back and share with you where you can look at the text of the bill for yourselves and where I can go and walk you through my own examination of what's in this bill. In the first video, as you recall, I shared the URL or the website where you can find the text of the bill. And I showed you how to get to the tab, highlight the text, and then go down and actually see it. And today's scope is simply to look at the table of contents for the whole bill. This will give us an overview of what's in the bill. I also want to highlight a couple of terms. You know, when I started reading legislation over 3 decades ago now, I found that there were some words that are used that are not words we commonly use. And so I had to look those words up. And my goal is to help you get over that hurdle by sharing with you some words that the definitions of some words that you're going to encounter as we go through this bill, and certainly as we look at the table of contents today. This is the screen that we use to show you where you can go, the URL that you can use to get to, and that URL is congress.gov/119th-congress/house-bill/1/text. So you go to that URL and you'll get a screen that looks like this. Then I want you to go down and make sure that you're in this tab right here for the text of the bill. Before we go any further, though, I do want to highlight, sorry for my lines being all over, being all crazy. I want to highlight these two terms. Rescission. Rescission is the revocation, cancellation, or repeal of a law, order, or agreement. So if you're talking about, if you see as we go through the table of contents, a rescission for forestry funding, which I think is something we'll see. That means, hey, we're going to cancel some funding that we had designated for forestry in a previous budget. And a moratorium is a temporary prohibition of an activity. So maybe we had an activity that we started in a previous bill or a previous budget, and we had funding for that, but we're going to put it on a moratorium, or we're going to establish a moratorium, which means we're going to stop doing that, at least for the time being. So now with that background, if you've followed me to the text of the bill and you scroll down, then what you're going to get to is a screen eventually that looks like this over here. And this is the beginning of the table of contents. It's the version of the bill. There are 4 versions of the bill on this website, but the version of the bill that the Senate passed back to the House for their consideration and their approval, the version of the bill that the House actually voted on and approved and sent to the president. In the Senate of the United States, they started their consideration on July 1st. They made an amendment. They said strike all after the first word and insert the following, and they put their text, and then there you go, table of contents. So that's where we're gonna go next. I'm gonna get out of this whiteboard. I'm gonna share my screen, and we're gonna scroll down through the table of contents and take a look at what's in the bill, just as an overview. So here we are, and now we're actually in a live screen share of the table of contents, where you should have arrived if you followed my steps in the previous part of this video. And you'll see here, table of contents. And we're going to scroll down, Title I, Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry. Nutrition. So they're going to reevaluate the Thrifty Food Plan. They're going to modify the SNAP work requirements for able-bodied adults, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, you can see that. There's that word rescission that we just talked about, rescission of amounts for forestry. So we're cutting some funds that were designated for forestry, and we'll have to look specifically at that section in the text of the bill to see what funding is being cut and where it was originally designated. Committee on the Armed Services, remember one of our criteria for evaluating whether this bill is a good bill is whether it provides for the common defense. And of course, the news reports say that they've increased the funding for the Department of Defense by something like 30%, which seems excessive to me, frankly. Now, I'm a veteran and I believe in a strong defense, but I also know that we spend far more than near peer competitors. We don't really have any peer competitors on defense. And so it's unclear to me why we needed to increase funding for the Department of Defense by such a large amount, especially if what we've done is increase the deficit, which is certainly one take on this budget bill, and we will look at the Congressional Budget Office evaluation of the bill in a future video. If you look at the 6 purposes of government as laid out in the Constitution, clearly providing for the common defense is one of the things the government must do, but there are other things that the government must do as well. And there's a balance that has to be struck between those competing things. So Committee on Banking, Housing and Urban Affairs, funding cap for the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection. This is an agency that was designed to protect consumers from fraud. And one of the takes on this administration is that they've reduced protections for consumers. They've reduced the government's role in protecting consumers from fraud. Rescission of funds for green and resilient retrofit program. So again, this is the cancellation of funds for some green or environmentally friendly program. And so we'll scroll down some more. Committee on Commerce, Science and Transportation, Title V, Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, Oil and Gas Leasing. Again, here, Committee on Environment and Public Works, we've got a lot of rescissions, and we've got a lot of rescissions of things that look like they were designed to protect the environment. So on the face of it, if one of the purposes of government is to promote the general welfare, one would think that clean air, clean water, a clean environment is consistent with the general welfare of all Americans, which is what that purpose of government is aimed at achieving. So if we're cutting all of the government funding or government support for environmental initiatives, it may be that that we're doing something that is not wise or is not consistent with the purposes of government. And so we'll have to take a look at what's being cut. And then we've got some work on taxes here. There's different sections on taxes. And again, what we're doing here is just scrolling through the table of contents to give you an overview of what's in the bill. Hopefully, some of these things are things of particular interest to you, and you'll go back and look at those sections for yourselves. I, of course, will, in future videos, look at specific sections as well. But for today, I just wanted to provide an overview of what is in this bill. Again, down here now we see termination of tax credits for things that one would think would protect the environment. Clean vehicle credit, commercial clean vehicle credit, et cetera, et cetera. These are things we would think would be good for the environment. Now we're down into health, subtitle B, and we're talking about Medicaid. One of the big controversies over this bill is whether it cuts Medicaid. Republicans have repeatedly said they're not interested in cutting Medicaid, or they wouldn't cut Medicaid. The initial reports on this bill are that it does cut Medicaid. So we will have to look at this and see what is the effect, or what is likely, what can we determine to be the effect of this language. And then we've got an increase in the debt limit, a modification of the limitation of the public debt, tucked in here in subtitle C. And we've got protecting rural hospitals and providers. One of the takes on this bill is that it actually cuts rural hospitals. It cuts funding for rural hospitals and will force them to close. Here, this language is written to sound like they're doing the opposite. But we'll have to take a look at the actual language of this section and in the context of what's been happening in the past to determine whether, in fact, the reporting is correct, that they're cutting funding for rural hospitals and providers. And we'll have to watch and see what the effect of this bill is as we go forward. Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. One of the takes on this bill is that it was intended to provide a lot of additional resources quickly for Homeland. Okay, so here we get down to the end of the immigration and law enforcement funding. Down to the judiciary matters. And then we go back to Title I again. Well, as you remember, at the beginning of the table of contents, we started with Title I. And so what this is telling us here, although it's not clear, is that we're leaving the table of contents at this point and going into the body of the bill. And that's more than we want to do in this particular video. So again, what we wanted to do is just scroll quickly through the table of contents, show you what's in the bill, show you where you can go in the bill to find things that are of particular interest to you. And I hope we've done that. Again, this is being brought to you by AccountabilityCitizenship.org. That's a company that I founded when I wrote my first book, Accountability Citizenship, in 2012. You can support AccountabilityCitizenship.org by buying my books at the website or any place really online where you can buy books, but I encourage you to visit the website. Thank you very much. Bye now.